Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, with a topic about sex. It's from the point of view of an older woman. Welcome, welcome. Hope you are enjoying our change in weather for the better. And still living within the COVID, but hey, we're surviving. Everybody's out there probably spending their stimulus check. Go ahead, although we all do have bills to pay. So, a lot of people are doing that. But, there are all different ways to have sex and all different techniques, ways to get, that full orgasmic connection and, just explosive orgasms. But, really, you sit down and ask yourself, who's enjoying it more? Did it ever pass your mind to think, who is enjoying sex more? Well, the rating game. And we all know that some people out there do that. I know it's a kid thing, but there are still some grown-ups up there that will do the rating game. How it was. Which brings us to what our topic is, as well as touching on a very unique technique. I can't even say it's a form of intercourse, which I would believe would be more infection prone than anything, but there are people out there who do it, and that's urethral intercourse. Yes, the urethra the pee goes down. It's connected to your bladder, but because the clitoris is so close to that, they believe that if you are having urethral sex, it's more an instantaneous sexual pleasure, and it will, have the woman on the edge from the beginning. But it also could be detrimental to you. But I know that men, I know there's a urethral sounding also. I'll probably touch on that as well. But men, more than women, I believe, will put something down their urethra, which will stimulate them and arouse them. I've heard of it more with men than women. I'm sure there's the same amount of women out there that do it. Urethral intercourse, which is also called coitus per urethrum. It's sexual penetration of the female urethra. Not a big definition there. And this is by an object such as the penis or a finger. And most people will go and stretch this out just so they can do it, because it is a smaller hole and basically just trying to get into every orifice on a woman's body. It isn't the same as urethral sounding, which is the act of inserting like a specialized medical tool into the urethra as a form of sexual or fetishistic activity. Really, too many S's in there. But it is done. And it is, if you don't know what you're doing, you really can hurt the person. So, I mean, it's nice to fun to play and try out some new things. Don't get me wrong sexually. But the untrained insertion of foreign bodies into the urethra is, it has so much significant risk that really subsequent medical attention may actually be required. So it's one of those areas that if you and your partner are thinking about it, I don't think a lot of people do, but if they are thinking, you are thinking about it, really, really look into it. See what the dangers are of it. And believe it or not, the documented cases that are out there, it occurred between heterosexual couples, believe it or not. There was a survey that was done. And I don't know how much, most of our body has this our skin has this electricity and muscle that can go back into shape. But if you are continually providing intercourse, in that means a lot of problems. Lots of problems. A lot of people with which is a condition, and they were engaging in urethral intercourse and unknowingly doing it, but they found that the stretching of the urethra required by this form of intercourse has also reportedly resulted in a complete and permanent loss of urethral sphincter, meaning that it doesn't control, doesn't go back into to its normal size. You've basically damaged the muscles, you damaged the nerves, and it results in urinary incontinence. Kind of, basically said having problems with urinating. So, but it is a very high risk of bladder infection. Granted, it does happen. And it's weird because when presenting with the symptoms of unintentional urethral intercourse, they include, believe it or not, primary infertility, dyspareunia, which is pain during intercourse, big words, and incontinence, which is going to happen. And then there are more detrimental. Those are detrimental enough, but there are more problems that come from it. So if you are thinking on doing this, aside from a catheter, which if you've had surgery and required it, you know what it is and you know how it feels. That's not putting damage, and a medical professional is providing that. So remember that. What comes with that? If serious problems, which is visceration via the urethra and bladder rupture. We don't want to have that problem. But it is out there and people are doing this. It is a form because, come on guys, you think that you gotta do all this stuff or you're not getting enough or you're not pleasing your female enough and you gotta do this in order to get it. That's not true. That's where we're going into our next topic, which who is actually pleasuring it from it, that rating system, and who's actually more pleasured by sexual intercourse, the man or the woman. and I know what a lot of people are saying out there. And just talking about urethral intercourse comes with urethral sounding. And some things that you really need to know if you're going to engage with this. Like I said, generally men will do this. I'm sure there's women out there that do it. But it's more where if you see the sex toys that are out there, they're more for the man than the woman when it comes to the urethra. And what is it? I went over it lightly. Urethral sounding involves inserting a toy into the urethra. The tube that drains urine out of the bladder, we all know what that is. It's the urethra. This practice actually started as a medical procedure to clear obstructions from the urethra. That's something that, not uncommon of what you would even think of why something would be put in there in your urethra. But if it is done safely and properly, it can be a satisfying form of sexual play. So there are those big words there, safely and properly. Obviously, I've perked a bit of an interest. I'm sure the little light bulbs are going on in there, and the sexual arousal is either that or we're all saying, oh my God, I would never do that. Now, why do people do it? And they do it because the genitals really are dense with nerves. There's so many nerves down there. And the urethra passes by particular sensitive areas, like in the penis head, the clitoris, the G-spot. Sounding actually stimulates these nerves directly. So it's really, instead of having to sit there and play with the clitoris or play with the head of a penis, you're getting that instantaneous, sensation of tapping into those nerves and getting that arousal like really quickly. A sounding toy can also directly stimulate the prostate if it is inserted deeply enough, believe it or not. Think about it. If you look at an anatomy poster of how we are built, men and women, the bladder, the urethra, women, the uterus, and all that good stuff, and where the prostate is, the anal cavity, and all that good stuff, I do not think that not stimulating one isn't going to stimulate the other. So, it is taboo to do, though. So, sounding can be exciting purely because it's new and really a different way and a different sensation because you never did it before. It's like you're feeling all kinds of new tingly things and sets off your sexual arousal even faster, and you may orgasm right then and there. It is a different way of having sex, but it is risky and not a traditional way of having sex. But then again, nowadays, what is traditional? Things have changed so much in the sexual bed. This obviously will make you feel happier and even less anxious or depressed about your sex life, really, because it's given, like I said, it's got dense nerves. Your genitals have dense nerves. Now that's why if you're touching, a woman is much more sensitive than a man, or a man, actually in this case, it's a little bit more sensitive because they're outies, we're innies, but women will sit on all those perineum nerves down there and we have more. So, if you literally actually connect with other individuals that actually practice this, like with online forums, workshops, and things like that, it could be a part of, a positive impact if you want to actually try this or practice it. So, again, you really got to look at the pros and cons and how they really outweigh each other when doing this. But I'm sure there are people out there that do it. If you go online, I'm sure you'll find some videos out there. And people are not shy to it or anything. Now, you're sitting there and you're saying, urethral intercourse, sex in your urethra, penis, object, sounding, whatever. How the heck does it really feel? It could be, whether it feels good or not is really subjective overall. It has to do with a lot of your sexual tastes, your sensitivity to pain, and really your openness to experiencing the urethral intercourse or urethral sounding can really affect you overall as to how it will feel for you as opposed to somebody else. Obviously, when you first do it, it's going to feel strange. Almost like you have to pee. Obviously, if you've ever taken a CAT scan or MRI and they do it with dye, it warms and stimulates your whole entire body and you feel like you have to pee. Wise choice is to go pee before you go, but there you go. You may also feel that something is scraping inside of your urethra because things don't go down there. Like I said, generally if you've been in surgery, they will usually give you a catheter and then they take it out before you wake up, so you probably don't even know if you had it or not. And there are, ways to learn to properly do it. And once you learn what toys and techniques feel for you, it could be increasingly, pleasurable to you. And on that note, we are going to take the first break in the show. So get a drink, get a snack, come back, get relaxed. It's one of those days to just be comfy with your big fluffy slippers and your jammies and talk and feel some sexual turn-ons. I will meet you back here after the break for more sex talk with Andra, where the topic right now is urethra intercourse and sounding, and then we're going to push it along onto who actually feels more pleasurable by sex. That little lovely rating game.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, where the topic about sex is from the point of view of an older woman. Welcome back from the break, where our topic right now, we're talking about urethral intercourse and sounding. And then we're going to move on to who had more pleasure. Sex overall. So let's finish up this topic. I hope we are all well hydrated and our tummies are comfortable as well as our bodies, our hands, and our genitals. Why not add them to the group? Now, when talking about urethral sex or sounding, it is taboo, but it is practiced. If you are planning on looking into it, again, educate, communicate, and consent. Please reach out to any forums or groups that are out there to do it properly, because the most that any of us, for the most part, have done and didn't even know was done is having a catheter, which you didn't feel because you were 3 sheets to the wind under anesthesia, or not, but still you must realize, and I think this is why, you've heard stories about when given a catheter, and nurses will tell you this, and given a catheter to a man, they almost instantaneously get erect. So, it is not an unknown fact, just something that has to be done medically. So when it goes into the pleasure bed, a lot more needs to be, what thought process must be thought out and more research done into it. So, it is safe to a sense. Obviously, if you are doing it correctly, it is safe. It does involve, there's some things that it involves, is one, sterilizing toys before sounding, finding the right size toy for you or your partner, not too big or thick or thin, because you can really put some damage on there. And I know a lot of people saying, well, if it's too thin, then it should just go right in. You gotta remember, if it's too thin, you really don't have a guide either, so you can be digging into the walls of the urethra. So remember it that way. Thick, I don't think I have to explain. Another thing is doing it slowly and gently. Remember, your partner or you will be a way through this. Do seek medical help if necessary for injury or the toys that do get stuck, and it is probably a known factor that will happen if not done properly. Now, will the urethra stay stretched out? Because if you're thinking about it, you are in a sense stretching your urethra. The size of your urethra will not be affected. If you are practicing, like particularly urethra sounding, every so often, so it gives enough time for those muscles to stretch back together. Same thing with, your vagina and things like that. You have a lot of sex, it's stretched out. You leave it alone, use Kegel exercises with the Kegel balls, then you're working on strengthening and tightening back up that pelvic floor and those vaginal muscles. So with that, it's going to get tighter. So remember that. If you're only practicing it, do it once or twice a year, yeah, it'll be fine. As long as it's done correctly. But, if you do practice it regularly, and this is more along the lines of weekly, daily, and all of that, the use increasingly makes it larger or more textured toy. Well, technically, if you're using increasingly larger or more textured toys, I put that into perspective for you. Then that's where you'll notice a stretching within your urethra. And it's not a good thing. So allow it to go back to, retract the elasticity there. Very, very important. Although for some, this is really part of the fun, which is stretching it out. Because you might just be in it just to stretch it out so that you can get a finger in there. Heaven only knows. I am not in your bedroom, but I'm assured I'm on your mind and you're thinking. Now, if you plan to do this, really, really please, safety, 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 take your time and be careful. And this is not to stretch it out to the point that it hurts or really causes your partner any discomfort. Remember that. It's out there. Look it up. And really reach out to like other groups or people who have done this, or you might have medical professionals that has become one of their sexual features in the sexual bed, and it's because they're medical students or medical personnel, shall I say, and been in it for so long, they know how to properly do this. We are not all medical in that sense, so remember that. If you're not a doctor, please really educate yourself in everything. Does it affect how you urinate? Yeah. It has no... Seriously, if you do it safely, there isn't any long-term effects, but when like right after you're doing it, and like say for the first time or whatever, you feel stinging, it may be temporary. Other than that, it may go into a bacterial infection of a UTI, and you need to go see a doctor, please, and thank you. The only real risk that come from the injury from using toys in this manner is when they are too big or being too rough when it is inserted. If you take your time and learn how to safely do it, then you shouldn't have any problems. Urination should be fine. Give it a break. It might be a weird sensation. I don't think... You got to think back, like I said, if you've had a catheter put in, aside from while you are under anesthesia, remember how that felt. It's the only way I can actually think to look at it this way. There are risks to consider when doing this, and these are like the major risks before trying out this urethra sounding. One is obviously the proneness to having a urinary tract infections from bacteria that was on the toy. I think I just said that. Or little small cuts as you are inserting that have damaged the urethra. Another risk is tissue damage. Where is it? You're being too rough, or the instrument has an abrasive texture. Remember, we're dealing with very sensitive tissue and nerves. That's why it's such a turn on. And it's such, especially for women, because the clitoris is like right there. So you get an instantaneous pleasure from it. Men, obviously, get a boner. So remember, there are things that come out of the urethra. You're going into the urethra, kind of sort of blocking that. Who's to say you might drain out some pee while you're in there? Heaven only knows. And another risk, a big, giant risk that is in there, these are the major risks, is the toy getting stuck because it went too deep into the urethra, or you didn't use enough lubrication. Now, I know a lot of people are sitting there thinking, well, do you put it straight in? No, lube, very, very, very important here. Very, very, very important. Okay? Obviously, who should try this? Who shouldn't try this? Obviously, there's really not a particular group or individual that shouldn't use it, or try it. But there are some situations that you shouldn't try sounding. urethral sounding would not be a wise choice to do this, which is one, an abnormal discharge coming out of your urethra already. So obviously you already have an infection in there. An active outbreak of sexually transmitted disease, if you have that. And usually it's herpes or gonorrhea, which is an outbreak because you cannot cure herpes, you can only control them, and you do get an outbreak. A history of frequent UTI. So if you are prone to getting urinary tract infections, even if you're really taking and maintaining your genitals and everything in the lower area, and you still get urinary tract infections, you are a little bit more sensitive to anything that would be coming or going through your urethra. Obviously, this was next a really big one because a history of injury to your urethra, which, can happen. Can happen very bad. It could happen medically, or it can happen that you did something. It could be the weirdest way in sports or something. Heaven only knows. And one other is a prostate condition like prostatitis, benign prostatic hyperplasia, or prostate cancer. Always something to think about before you do this. Now we get all the bad stuff out of the way. We're going to talk about what objects are used. Yes. Now, there are a lot of things that you can keep in mind when you are choosing your toys. There are common types of toys, which are plugs, which with the plug, you know that they only go an inch or so into your urethra, okay, and have like a ball at the end of them, so obviously will stop. Sounders, believe it or not, there are actually names of things called sounders. And these are long, thin, and cylinder shaped, and they go deeper into your urethra. Catheters are a favorite one, which is medically done. And these are used obviously in medical procedures and designed to go into your urethra. I'm sure if you go into a medical supply place, you probably could find one. Simple as that. If you know somebody who's a nurse or whatever the case may be, and they're in home, heaven only knows, they may just have it in their little bag. Now, we're moving on to the materials of that toy, okay, of your choice, whatever you pick, which are you'll find that most plugs and sounders are made of like surgical grade stainless steel or titanium, or silicone or plastic. So these are the ones that are out there, and different materials are much easier to use, much harder to use, or more safer to use. Obviously, titanium sounders are easier to insert and heavy enough to basically slide in on their own, but they're inflexible. So remember that as well. It's going to be straight. So if you're uncomfortable with that straightness, don't use it. Silicone sounders are the flexible and softer ones, but they are hard to slide in because of the texture of the surface of them. Now we go into the length of the sounders. We're all saying, well, geez Louise, how long does this thing have to be? There are different lengths of sounders, and they range from 1/2 inch to as long as you can imagine, obviously, up to about 1 foot in length, believe it or not. Very well endowed individual for that. I can't see 1 foot being there in length, because I think by that time you're either going up too far and then puncturing the bladder, or you may have it where you're not putting it completely all the way down and you like to see it sticking out like that, Completely up to you. However, the most common length is between 3 and 6 inches, okay? Now, the girth is obviously measured in smaller by millimeters. And you could choose a small one. And this is generally what you should do if you are starting out with urethral sounding. And then you gradually increase it in size in just very little increments. The shape of it, most of them are like long and thin, but some are completely straight. There are some that have slight curving, and then there are those that have the bulges in the middle or at the ends of them. Now, for those of you who have a penis, you can wrap around, like the sounder can wrap around your glands like a hoop with a ball attached that goes into your urethra opening. So the ball will go in, and then the ring will go around the penis. Moving on to lovely texture. Oh, wait a second. We're going to take a break. On that note, please, we are going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll finish this up and moving right along. So, replenish that drink, replenish that snack. Come back, get relaxed, or stay right where you are. Continue on with what you are doing. But I still will meet you back here after the break for more Sex Talk with Andra.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, where the topic about sex is from the point of view of an older woman. Welcome back. I hope you got a little bit of a break there, maybe starting over. Our topic is urethra sounding, or intercourse. But right now we're talking about different urethra sounding toys. And it is mentioned that the average, for the beginner use of this, you should get one that is like, because the average size of the male urethra is 6 millimeters to 8 millimeters in diameter. So you should use a shorter, straight urethra sound to start, and kind of sort of go from there. If you like it, gradually move your way up the lovely chain of sizes in them. But right now we're talking about different textures of what things, kind of sounders are out there. Okay, so we are on texture now. And when I continue on, remember, when doing anything new or trying anything new, please do educate yourself and do get consent, as well as communicating with your partner. Both of you may want to try it, but only on one of you do it. So remember that. You need to really talk about those expectations and all of that all together. So moving along, we are on texture. And there's a wide variety of textures, as with everything else in life. You get your smooth, ribbed, studded, wavy, ridged. Heaven only knows how it goes on and on and on. You can really play. And if you're thinking about it, you go out for condoms, and if you get the ribbed ones, they'll have like little nubbies on it or something. It's supposed to be more pleasurable to the woman. Okay, whatever. If it actually works, go for it. You're always trying something different anyway. Now, how do you do it? And we're going to go through some steps here. Now, and this is to actually, doing your urethral sounding safely. Okay. First, sterilization, big thing. Wash everything that you are going to use, the toys, everything. And you wash them in boiling water, which most people know kills off, higher temperatures kill off bacteria. Or betadine solution. And then you use that, before you use them. When you are washing them, use gentle unscented soap and warm water. And this is to wash your hands and your outer genitals as well before starting. Obviously, when it comes to any sexual pleasure, position is a big deal. Get comfortable. Simple as that. Whether you're sitting, standing, lying down, wherever, you could be in your old recliner chair that you love, really, you love that better than anything in the world. Big step 2. Apply a lot of lube near the urethral opening and on your toy, please. And use a water-based lube, please. No chemicals. If you are the owner of the vulva, obviously spread your labia and keep them apart, so that it is really that much easier to access the urethral opening. Now, for those of you with an outie, a lovely penis friend, you do get partially erect. You get erect. I said it before. You usually do it when, if they're putting a catheter in you. Most nurses will tell you that, or medical staff will tell you that. When you are fully erect, though, it can make the urethra opening tighter, or make it the penis too sensitive for insertion because you're really up there. But you need to get partially erect, even though once you're being touched and played with anyway, it's going to do it. So in the beginning stages is when you want to insert the sounder. Now the insertion of the lovely little device. Use one hand to gently spread the urethra opening and the other hand to guide the toy. So it's a two-fisted job here. 2, you're going to go really, really slow. Please go slow. Don't force it. If you feel pressure or a rush through putting the toy in, inserting it, seriously, you can cause some damage. And there are some heavy toys like steel or those titanium plugs. They slide in on their own, but they are still heavy. So remember that as well. Now, this one sounds funny, but you're still going to do it. 3, shake your genital or pelvic area gently if it stops moving. And that is to basically move it along, because what is it called? When you slap something, you're kind of sort of shaking it to wake up. Best way I could explain that. The words were not coming. And don't force it. If it's not going in as fast as you want it to, do not force it, especially if this is new to you. And then really, if that's the case, take it out gently and then add more lube to the toy and to the urethra, and then either get a smaller toy, a smaller sounder, or a thinner one, and then go back through the steps again. Now, manual stimulation, okay? When you get comfortable with how far it's in and it being in, try moving it around a little so that it stimulates some of those nerve endings. And then you can try to pull it out gently and then in again, kind of sort of like you're being penetrated yourself. You can also massage your genitals. Obviously, the woman's or vulva, labia, all that good stuff. Men, shaft, head, there you go. And that adds a little bit of extra pleasure there, of course. You can put lips on the sounder device. And what you can do with that, so if you put your mouth onto it, your lips, hum, which will vibrate it inside of the urethra, which will be a total turn on to most. Now, after pleasure is all said and done, clean up. Now, obviously, first things first, slowly remove the toy, please, and gently. Don't go fast. Take your time. If it feels painful or uncomfortable, so this way you can go and don't have that uncomfortable or painful feeling when it's coming out. If it does, add more lube to your urethra opening, which will help it slide out easier. Now, after you get it out, please go to the bathroom. Pee, 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 pee. Really, really fast. Pee right away. Even though they tell you to do that, especially women, after sexual intercourse, penetration, even into the vagina, get up and go pee. It removes the lube that was in the urethra or any bacteria, gets it out. And this will avoid getting a UTI. It may sting a little bit for a day or two afterwards, but it'll go away. If it does not go away, definitely seek medical help. And then again, wash everything. Hands, genital areas, toys used, everything. A lot of precautions that you can take, but if you're doing it correctly and you're sterilizing and doing things, you can enjoy it a lot more. You've got to just take all those precautions of using lube. Obviously, lube is not used as a numbing agent, but don't use lube with a numbing agent. Not a very wise choice. It wouldn't even be a wise choice to use a numbing agent, only because your partner who's receiving this and you're doing it to can't feel or tell you if something is wrong or if it hurts or whatever. Now, if these are situations when you're going to pull out and stop immediately, pain, numbness, cold sensation around the genitals or throughout your body, not a very good thing. That means you're cutting off some nerve or some part of circulation. Obviously, unusual changes in the color of your genital area, and that's either becoming pale or bluish, cutting off circulation somewhere. We all know it. And that actually goes well beyond the blue balls, believe me or not. Unusual discharge, swelling, redness, or bleeding. Please do take heed of these precautions. There are other precautions. Don't use objects that obviously are not meant to be used for sounding purposes. They say not to use your fingers, but some people, after you've stretched it out, they do. Completely up to you. Don't use forks, straws, anything like that, like kitchen utensils. Not a wise choice. And don't use oil-based or scented lubes. Remember, water-based lubes work the best. Now, what if you can't get the object out? Please, in any situation like this, you've got to stay calm, because if you're going crazy and you're not calm, the individual, your partner, is going to probably do the same thing, and the panic is going to make swelling worse or make the situation worse. You've got to relax your genital muscles. Breathe. Talk through it to your partner. Try and feel for the toy from the skin above, okay? Because then you might be able to squeeze it or rub it and push that toy out. Also, sit in warm water, which is very relaxing. Always, add some more lube to the area in the urethra opening. And if it's still not coming out, go to the emergency room. Obviously, don't lie to the medical profession on what is there, because they cannot help you correctly if you do not. Be honest with them, please, and thank you. It's always nice to try new things sexually and doing it with someone that you love. But you always, always, always must take caution in what you're doing. And always, I can't say it enough, educate, communicate, and consent. Because when it comes down to the fun, that is what is all about. That safe word, that motion, anything. If your partner is uncomfortable and they say stop. Very, very important to listen to your partner and what they are saying to you. You do not want to hurt each other. Okay. That's always a good thing to know. You can do sounding. It's a switch up. But it really, really, you gotta know a lot more. I mean, there's every new sexual kink you want to try, if you want to say that. But knowing about it and how to properly do it is very, very, so very, very important. And educating yourself on it. Some things are more dangerous than other sexual acts, this being one of them. But if you've done your education and you've talked, if you're doing it by yourself, it's a masturbation enhancer. You know when to stop, because you know your own feelings and what you are feeling. So maybe doing it alone, then going to a partner. This way you can guide them onto properly doing that, a proper sounding. Okay, so with that, we are going to take the last break in the show. And when I come back, we will talk about who enjoys sex more. Or should we have a ratings game? So, hang loose, stay comfortable, hydrated, continue on with what you are doing. And I will meet you back here for more sex talk with Andra for the final segment in today's show.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, with a topic about sex. This from the point of view of an older woman. Welcome back to the last segment in today's show. Obviously, there's more to come, where we were talking about urethra sounding, which is a sexual, thing, because it leads up to sometimes sexual intercourse through the urethra, which is, if that's what you would like to do, go for it. Just be very careful when doing it, because you can hurt each other very badly. Doing it with safety and with the proper tools and lubes and things like that, you should be okay. But if the word is stop, or whatever kind of safe thing you are doing, please do adhere to your partner's request. But always, always educate, communicate, and consent, as with anything new that you try. Now we are moving on to who enjoys sex more, men or women? This is one of those questions you sit around the freaking cookout and talk about grown-up lives or with your friends. Generally men do, but hey, who's saying it? Obviously, gotta find out who is really enjoying it more, because there are so many different ways in which it can be enjoyed. But we know, that men have a stronger sex drive than women. Not every woman, but in general, overall, studies and things like that, that men have a stronger sex drive. It's not, anything new to us. We know that. It does, take a couple of hands, a mouth, some awareness spatially, and obviously skillful timed caressing. Even some other things to get a woman going. Not all. Majority. Where innies, they're outies. Obviously, with men, a swift wind could go by, and boom, they're up and ready to go. Women don't think that way. They get turned on for no reason. With women, men get turned on by everything because their mind is sexually rigged. Women, we go into it for more of the bonding and the intimacy of the sex that comes along. We want more. We want more out of it. And it's funny because in a study, it really says that men tend to think about sex more often than women do. Not an unknown factor. With most men under 60 thinking about sex at least once a day, compared to only 25% of women. Real low numbers there, guys. When men want more sex than women do at any particular stage of the relationship, which we know that as well. The more sex, the more fun. I think they equate the sex with the overall feelings and intimacy of the relationship, because they go out and have sex with somebody and they like the sex, all of a sudden they're in love with them. Who is to say, women do it at any particular stage of the relationship. But this is how our biology works. So we got a little bit more control over it. However, maybe you might want to give men 1 point for that. Who is keeping score? Okay. However, men, we as women have something over you. We can orgasm over and over again, and you are so jealous. Obviously, your penis is not allowing you to do that. It is one of our gifts as women, and give yourself a pat on the back, women. We have as women, the magic of that little clitoris. It's almost like pushing a button, you know what I mean, to the sexual arousal. But unfortunately, men have a refractory period where the penis hovers in accompanying plumbing. We have to recover from actually having sex again. Us as women, we don't have to have any of that recovery time. We can just keep going. Okay, so while you're recovering, we're getting off. You either help or you don't. Most women will tell you if they did not have an orgasm before you did, or at the same time as you did, you didn't do what you were supposed to. You didn't get them off. And they will come to you and tell you, you finished? Because I'm not. And I'm assured, men, you have heard that before. So, we, unfortunately, taking orgasm over and over and over again, we orgasm less often than men. Ugh, man, the tables went back to the men again. I'm working on it. I'm working on it for you women. Now, there was a study that was done in Australia, and they found that men have more orgasms than women do, with men orgasming in 95% of sexual encounters, and women only having orgasms at 69% of the time. Again, I think it's because as women, and you're able to orgasm over and over again, we're getting them all out. I don't know how to explain it. But this might also explain why men think about sex more than women do. Because their penis is running the show. It almost looks as though women don't orgasm at all. This is so not true. When a woman orgasms, they continue with that orgasm. It's always, always there. They don't stop or anything. It's just that continual orgasm. And most men do know that. And they like to play on that and get as many orgasms from their woman as they can so that they can put up their scoreboard. But then women come back around and you last only that one time and fall asleep. So kind of take her in there with the pointage. Men do orgasm easier than women. Not a big feat to know. It takes all of the males come, and it's funny because they even put a time frame on it. 4 minutes, 4 short minutes of penis and vagina sex, sexual intercourse. Okay, it takes all that short amount of time for a man to come. But, pointage to us as women take between 10 and 20 minutes to get to orgasm. Not really, what the guy's listening to, but hey, that's what happens. this actually is not just straight penetration. You need a little bit of other stuff for women to get off. And guys know this because they love playing down in the pubic mound and finding their way through the jungle. But I think it's a point for men, or, point for women. Heaven only knows. If you finish too soon, a good thing. Because it was like so little effort required to do it. You are going to be talked about, men. If a woman does it, it might just be because she hasn't had sex in a really long time. So we get that point. Ours are harder. But we can come back. We'll get that initial one out there. Women will come back and sex up a new orgasm. Guys, you got one really huge one, and then we got to wait. The woman needs to wait for you. So we get that point. Obviously, men's sex drives are more straightforward than women. Not in every woman. For the majority. Remember that. They like to express it as the caveman level of functioning when it comes to sex for a guy. You're biologically and evolutionarily wired to feel the need to spread your lovely seed out into the population to reproduce. This is why you always get that little twitch when you see an attractive woman or an attractive prospective partner, or one that you're with and she changes something around and twinge. There you go. You don't need to form an emotional connection to come out and just say, hey, I want sex, I had an erect penis, let's do it. Women, on the other hand, we like to know, get a little bit better. There's more intimacy to it, a little more of a bonding. We're not just going to let you in. There are women out there that have no problem with that, and women are human just like men. When it comes to sex, hey, why should a woman get talked about and the man not? It's because we accept it more for a characteristic of men. And that's what it is. Generally, you don't get sex. Women don't give up sex until they're really into that relationship, or they find that they're going to be in that relationship, that person's going to be around. Others, hey, nowadays, things are different in the sexual world, whereas women are now having the booty calls and not even caring, just because they want to get their groove on. And it's a lot might come in with regards to age difference, like get a younger man, older woman, and yes, there are those relationships out there that do work in that particular aspect, and kudos to you. But then you get, if it's just to see how they are in bed, hey, this is a different time and age in our society, whereas, kind of sort of on either side of the rope on this one. So, pointage to both sides, but I really think the women are winning at this point in time. But it has been found that women do enjoy sex more than men. Whether you want to hear it or not, it is quite true. And I think it's the way in which women actually approach sex. Our genitals are not talking for us. Our minds are. men is your genitals are talking, not your mind. Why women need more sex than men? Well, we, obviously as women, are considered a repressed population in a world of male-dominated sex. And when it comes to sex overall, we're not shy anymore as women. Women are not shy. They are not shy over here in the word of sex. They're not shy as with regards to their sexual desires. So being in control of that as a woman really will look and need sex more than a man. And good sex at that. That sexual attraction, obviously men do have a sexual attraction to a woman's body as a woman does to a man's body, or same sex. Doesn't matter. There are a lot of desires that are there. Women are really looking at you a little bit more intensely than you're looking at them. They've got you pegged. So, sex means more to them. They want more of it. Men, you are just basically being run by the penis in your pants. Obviously, as said before, multiple orgasms. Women are becoming more open to different options when it comes sexual, and that were never there a long time ago to women are now more open to them now, and they're just preying on it. Go for it. A lot of the touching, talking, then sex in there and everything. When you get to the Middle Ages, women either become really sexual, the libido heightens, or it doesn't. You know, it's one or the other. They're, like I said, going for that younger individual to have sex with, higher sex desire, and all of this good stuff. But when it comes down to the day, who wants it more and who is, how do they rate between men and women? Women come up well over men. So give yourself a pat on the back, women, because in the war of sex, they can't touch this. With that being said, I am at the end of my show for today. As always, especially with urethra sounding and trying anything new, please educate, communicate, and consent. Also, please practice safe sex, if not for your partner, for yourself, and vice versa. Very, very, very important. As always, thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Please hit the subscribe button, because it's right there. Hit the subscribe button. Give us 5 stars. Tell us what you like. Give us some good feedback. It not only helps me, but it does help the GSMC Podcast Network. Also, please, I ask that you search us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, because we are there too. Hit that little thumbs up like button, or the little heart to give us some love. Show us some love there. But leave, a comment, what you would like to hear discussed on the show. Also, some good comments in there as well. You want more, say you want more. Go for it. So, on that note, thank you again for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, which is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And this is Andra, signing off until next time, where I bring you more sex talk with Andra. Bye-bye for now.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast.